The canopy explodes, glass everywhere, shrapnel tears through the cockpit, altitude dropping, engine sputtering, oil pressure 0, radio dead, and through the smoke, through the chaos, Erich Hartmann can see 8 Soviet fighters, circling, waiting, ready to finish what they started. He's alone, 20,000 feet over the Ukrainian steppe, 22 years old, and this is his 14th mission. Not his last, his 14th, because Erich Hartmann, this young German pilot, bleeding, aircraft dying beneath him, would go on to shoot down 352 enemy aircraft. 352. That's not a propaganda number. That's not an exaggeration. That's the confirmed, documented witness total. The highest score in aviation history, by anyone, ever. And the question isn't how he did it. The question is, why did he survive long enough to do it? Let me tell you about numbers. 352 aerial victories. To put that in perspective, the top American ace of World War II, Major Richard Bong, shot down 40 aircraft. 40. That's impressive. That's legendary. Hartmann shot down nearly 9 times that many. The top British ace, Johnny Johnson, 38 confirmed. The top French ace, Pierre Clostermann, 33. Hartmann's score is higher than the top 5 Allied aces, combined. It's a number so extreme, so far beyond normal, that when the war ended, Allied intelligence officers didn't believe it. They thought it was German propaganda. They thought the Luftwaffe had inflated the numbers. They investigated, checked Soviet records, checked gun camera footage, interviewed witnesses, and they confirmed it. Every single one, 352. Now, here's what makes this even more remarkable. Hartmann survived. Most fighter aces didn't. The life expectancy of a Luftwaffe pilot on the Eastern Front was measured in weeks. Hartmann flew 1,400 missions, 1,400, over 3 years. He was shot down 16 times, 16. Crashed aircraft, parachuted into enemy territory, captured twice, escaped twice, and kept flying. Most pilots who achieved even 50 victories died in combat. Hartmann survived the entire war, and after the war, spent 10 years in Soviet captivity, and survived that too. So the question becomes, how? How does someone become that good? And more importantly, how do you stay alive that long when everyone in the sky is trying to end you? Let's go back to the beginning. April 19th, 1922. Weissach, Germany, a small town in Württemberg. Erich Alfred Hartmann is born to a middle-class family. His father is a doctor. His mother, Elisabeth, is a pilot. Yes, his mother. Elisabeth Hartmann learned to fly in the early 1920s, when women pilots were rare. She ran a gliding school. Young Erich grew up around aircraft. By age 14, he was flying gliders. By 16, he had his glider pilot license. This wasn't a hobby, this was his life. He understood flight instinctively, the way some people understand music, the feel of the aircraft, the response of the controls, the relationship between speed, altitude, and energy. He didn't think about flying, he just flew. 1940. Hartmann is 18. Germany has been at war for a year. The Luftwaffe is expanding rapidly. They need pilots. Hartmann enlists, begins flight training. And here's where it gets interesting. He wasn't a natural. Oh, he could fly. But combat flying is different. His instructors noted that he was reckless, aggressive, too willing to push the aircraft beyond its limits. He crashed during training. Multiple times, damaged aircraft, got reprimanded. His superior officers wondered if he would ever make it as a fighter pilot. One instructor wrote in his evaluation, quote, "This cadet has excellent flying skills, but lacks discipline and judgment. He will likely not survive long in combat." End quote. That instructor was wrong, and right, because Hartmann's aggression, his willingness to push limits, that's exactly what would make him the deadliest pilot in history. October 1942, Hartmann completes training, gets assigned to Jagdgeschwader 52, Fighter Wing 52, the most successful fighter unit in the Luftwaffe. They're based on the Eastern Front, flying Messerschmitt Bf-109s, the iconic German fighter, and Hartmann, young, inexperienced, untested, arrives at the unit expecting glory. Instead, he gets reality. His first mission, he sees nothing. Returns to base. Second mission, he sees Soviet aircraft in the distance. Doesn't engage, too far away. Third mission, he encounters Soviet fighters. Gets separated from his wingman. Panics, runs out of fuel. Crash lands in no man's land. Has to walk back to German lines. His squadron mates mock him, call him the crash pilot. And Hartmann realizes something. Training didn't prepare him for this. Combat is chaos, speed, confusion, fear. And if he's going to survive, he needs to figure it out. Fast. Now let me tell you about the Eastern Front Air War, because this is where Hartmann spent his entire combat career, and it's important to understand what he was facing. The Eastern Front wasn't like the Western Front. In the West, the Luftwaffe fought against well-trained American and British pilots, flying advanced aircraft with numerical superiority. In the East, the situation was different. The Soviet Air Force had thousands of aircraft, thousands, but many of their pilots, especially early in the war, had minimal training. Some Soviet pilots had less than 20 hours of flight time before being sent to combat. 20 hours. That's barely enough to learn how to land safely. The aircraft were good. The Yak fighters, the LA-5s, the Lavochkin series. These were capable machines. But the pilots, many of them, were cannon fodder, thrown into combat with inadequate preparation. And that created a target-rich environment for experienced German pilots. But here's the thing. Numbers matter. The Soviets could afford losses. Germany couldn't. For every Soviet pilot shot down, 2 more appeared. The Red Air Force was a meat grinder, and German pilots, no matter how skilled, were facing an enemy that could replace losses faster than Germany could inflict them. Hartmann understood this. He understood that individual skill meant nothing if you didn't survive. So he developed a philosophy, a set of rules, and these rules are what kept him alive. Rule 1. See the enemy first. Hartmann spent more time scanning the sky than anything else. He had exceptional eyesight, could spot aircraft at ranges most pilots couldn't, and he used that, constantly sweeping the horizon, looking for the glint of sunlight on a canopy, the smoke trail from an engine, the dark speck against the clouds. Because in aerial combat, the pilot who sees first wins. Most aerial victories in World War II happened when the victim never saw the attacker. Hartmann knew this, and he made sure he was never the victim. Rule 2. Close to point-blank range before firing. Most pilots opened fire at 300, 400 yards. Hartmann waited. 50 yards, sometimes closer. He called it, "Get so close you can't miss." His motto was, "I don't shoot until I can see the rivets on the enemy aircraft." Why? Because ammunition is limited. A Bf-109 carried about 15 seconds of cannon fire. That's it, 15 seconds. If you're spraying ammunition from long range, you're going to run out fast. And when you run out, you're defenseless. Hartmann conserved ammunition, close to knife-fighting range, and when he fired, he didn't miss. 1 burst, 2 seconds. The enemy aircraft exploded, or caught fire, or fell out of the sky, and Hartmann was already turning away, looking for the next target. Rule 3. Never dogfight. Dogfighting looks impressive. Aircraft twisting and turning, trying to get on each other's tail. But it's dangerous. It burns fuel, It gives the enemy's wingmen time to intervene. Hartmann avoided it. His tactic was simple. Dive from altitude, high-speed approach, close to point blank, one burst. If the target didn't go down, break off, climb back to altitude, reset, wait for another opportunity. He called it boom and zoom. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't the chivalrous aerial combat of World War I, but it worked, and it kept him alive. Rule 4, always check your 6, the 6 o'clock position, directly behind you, the blind spot. Hartmann was paranoid about his 6, constantly looking back over his shoulder, constantly scanning, because the moment you focus too much on the enemy in front of you, you die, someone gets on your tail, and you never see it coming. Hartmann flew with his head on a swivel. Awareness, situational awareness, that's what kept him alive. Let me tell you about November 5th, 1943. Hartmann has been flying combat for a year. He has about 90 confirmed victories, 90. Already one of the top aces in the Luftwaffe. And on this day, he's leading a flight of 4 Bf-109s, escorting German bombers attacking Soviet positions near Kiev. They're at 22,000 feet, clear sky, and Hartmann spots them, Soviet fighters, Yak-9s, maybe 20 of them, climbing to intercept the bombers. The other German pilots see them too, and they hesitate. 20 Soviet fighters, 4 German. The odds are terrible. Hartmann doesn't hesitate. He radios his wingman, "Follow me," and he dives. Here's what happens next. Hartmann closes to within 50 yards of the lead Soviet fighter, fires a 2-second burst. The Soviet aircraft explodes, breaks apart. Hartmann doesn't watch. He's already turning, lining up the next target. Another Yak, closing, 50 yards, fire. The Yak's engine erupts in flames. The pilot bails out. Hartmann brakes left, checks his 6, clear, spots another target, dives, 50 yards, fire. The Yak's wing tears off, spirals into the ground. In less than 3 minutes, Hartmann has shot down 3 Soviet fighters. The rest scatter, dive for the deck, retreat. The German bombers complete their mission, unharmed, and Hartmann lands back at base. Debriefs, 3 confirmed kills, witnesses, gun camera footage, all verified. Just another day for Hartmann. Now, let me tell you about the Soviet pilots, because this is important. The narrative, especially in the West, is often that the Eastern Front was just Germans shooting down poorly trained Soviets. And yes, early in the war, that was true. But by 1943, the Soviet Air Force had improved dramatically. They had experienced pilots, veterans, aces themselves. Pilots like Ivan Kozhedub, who had finished the war with 62 confirmed victories. Alexander Pokrishkin, 59 victories. These were skilled, dangerous opponents, and Hartmann faced them regularly and still came out ahead. Why? According to Soviet records, which weren't declassified until after the Cold War, Hartmann was known. The Soviets called him the Black Devil, because his aircraft had a distinctive black tulip design painted on the nose, a psychological weapon. Soviet pilots were warned about him, told to avoid engaging the black tulip. Break off if you see it, because engaging meant dying. And the Soviets learned this the hard way. Multiple Soviet aces tried to shoot down Hartmann, tried to make a name for themselves by bringing down the Black Devil. They all failed, and most of them died trying. Let me tell you about one of them. Lev Shestakov, Soviet ace, 32 confirmed victories, experienced, confident, and he wanted Hartmann. April 1944. Shestakov is flying a LA-5, one of the best Soviet fighters, and he spots Hartmann's black tulip at a distance. Instead of breaking off, Shestakov attacks, climbs to altitude, tries to get the jump on Hartmann, but Hartmann sees him first. And here's the thing about experience. Shestakov is good, but Hartmann is better. Hartmann lets Shestakov close, seems unaware, bait. Shestakov takes it, commits, and at the last second, Hartmann breaks. Hard right, climbs, reverses, and now Shestakov is the target. Hartmann closes, 50 yards, fires. Shestakov's LA-5 goes down in flames. Shestakov bails out, survives, is captured, and spends the rest of the war in a German POW camp. Later, after the war, Shestakov was interviewed. He said, quote, "I thought I had him. I thought I was the better pilot. I was wrong. He saw me. He let me think I had the advantage, and then he killed my aircraft. I should have died." End quote. That's the difference between good and great. Now, let's talk about the cost. Because 352 victories sounds glorious, but every one of those numbers represents a human being. A Soviet pilot, someone's son, someone's brother, someone who woke up that morning, ate breakfast, climbed into a cockpit, and never came home. Hartmann understood this. In his post-war interviews he said, quote, "I never felt pride in the number. Each victory was a tragedy. I did my duty. I defended my comrades. I fought for survival, but I never celebrated. Because I knew, on the other side, there was a family that would never see their son again." End quote. That's the difference between Hartmann and propaganda. He wasn't a Nazi. He didn't fight for ideology. He fought because he was a soldier, because his country was at war, and because if he didn't shoot them down, they would bomb his comrades, or shoot him down. Let me tell you about the Black Devil, the black tulip design on Hartmann's Bf-109. It became famous, too famous. By mid-1944, Soviet pilots were specifically instructed to avoid it. Don't engage the black tulip. Report its position and call for reinforcements. But do not engage. That should have been good news for Hartmann, but it wasn't. Because if Soviet pilots won't engage, you can't shoot them down. Your mission becomes useless. So Hartmann made a decision. He removed the black tulip, had his aircraft repainted, standard grey, no markings, anonymous. And suddenly, Soviet pilots engaged again, and Hartmann's victory count started climbing. Again. August 1944. Germany is losing. The Eastern Front is collapsing. Soviet forces are advancing, and the Luftwaffe is running out of everything. Aircraft, fuel, parts, pilots. And yet, Hartmann is still flying, still shooting down Soviet aircraft. But now it doesn't matter, because Germany is losing, and Hartmann knows it. He wrote in his diary, quote, "We win every battle in the air, and we're still losing the war. Every day we shoot down 10 aircraft, and tomorrow they have 20 more. We're drowning, and there's nothing we can do." End quote. That's the tragedy of the Eastern Front. Individual skill, individual courage, individual sacrifice, all meaningless, because the Soviets had more aircraft, more pilots, more everything. And Germany didn't. May 8th, 1945. The war is over. Germany has surrendered. And Hartmann makes a decision. He could surrender to the Americans, to the British. They're closer. But he knows if he surrenders to the Soviets, his men, his squadron, will be treated as war criminals. Because the Soviets hate the Luftwaffe. Specifically, they hate fighter pilots. So Hartmann does something remarkable. He orders his squadron to destroy their aircraft, burn them. Then he leads his men west, trying to reach American lines. But they're too late. Soviet forces intercept them. And Hartmann, the most successful fighter pilot in history, becomes a prisoner of war. Now, here's where it gets dark. The Soviets don't treat Hartmann as a prisoner. They treat him as a war criminal. They accuse him of murdering Soviet pilots. They hold show trials, demand confessions. Hartmann refuses, says, "I was a soldier. I followed the rules of war. I shot down military aircraft in combat. That's not murder, that's war. The Soviets don't care. They sentence him to 25 years hard labor, 25 years, and they send him to the Gulag, Siberia, where he spends the next 10 years in conditions designed to break him: starvation rations, forced labor, isolation, and Hartmann survives. Again, because that's what he does. He survives. 1955, West Germany and the Soviet Union negotiate prisoner exchanges, and Hartmann is released, returns to Germany. He's 33 years old, has spent 10 years in Soviet captivity, and the war has been over for a decade. Germany is rebuilding. The Luftwaffe is being reformed as part of NATO, and they want Hartmann, want him to train the new generation of German pilots. And Hartmann agrees, rejoins the Luftwaffe, serves until 1970, retires, and lives quietly until 1993, when he dies, age 71. Natural causes, survived the war, survived the Gulag, survived everything. Now, let me tell you about legacy. Because Hartmann's story is complicated, he holds the record, 352. That will likely never be broken. Modern air combat is different. Long-range missiles, radar, planes that never see each other. The age of the fighter ace is over. Hartmann was the best at something that no longer exists. But what's his legacy? In Germany, he's respected, a professional, a survivor. In Russia, he's controversial, the Black Devil, the man who shot down hundreds of Soviet pilots. In America, he's admired, a skilled opponent, someone who fought with honor, even if he fought for the wrong side. But here's the thing. Hartmann didn't choose his side. He was born in Germany in 1922. He grew up in a country that was humiliated, impoverished, angry, and when war came, he served. He didn't join the Nazi Party. He didn't commit war crimes. He fought, and he followed his own code, and he survived. And after the war, he refused to lie, refused to say he was wrong for defending his country, but also refused to glorify what he'd done. He said, quote, "I did my duty. I'm not proud of the number. I'm not ashamed. I survived. That's all." End quote. Let me bring this back to where we started. The canopy exploding, glass everywhere, altitude dropping. Erich Hartmann, 22 years old, 14th mission, bleeding, aircraft dying, Soviet fighters circling. That was early in his career. A crash landing. Survived. And from that moment forward, Hartmann decided he would never be helpless again. He would train, study, learn, master his aircraft, master his tactics, master the art of survival. And he did. Better than anyone. Ever. 352. That's the number. But the real story isn't the number. The real story is how someone becomes that good, and how someone stays that good for 3 years, 1,400 missions, 16 times shot down, 16 times walked away, 2 escapes from Soviet capture, 10 years in the Gulag, and still survived. Because Erich Hartmann wasn't just the deadliest fighter pilot in history. He was the most resilient, the most adaptable, the most determined to survive. And that's the lesson, not the number, the survival. And here's the final irony. The thing that history books don't tell you. Hartmann's greatest enemy wasn't Soviet pilots. It wasn't the Red Air Force. It was luck. Because skill can only take you so far. There's always randomness, a mechanical failure at the wrong moment, a bullet from a random burst that hits your engine, a collision you never saw coming. Hartmann survived 1,400 missions, and statistically, he should have died multiple times, but he didn't, because yes, he was skilled, but also he was lucky, and in war sometimes luck is everything. So when you hear the number 352, remember what it represents, not just victories, but survival, resilience, and the strange, uncomfortable truth that in war, the best aren't always fighting for the right side. They're just fighting and trying not to die. And Erich Hartmann, the Blonde Knight, the Black Devil, the deadliest fighter pilot in history, did that better than anyone, ever.